It's time for Recipe of the Day. I've made white chicken chili a few times over the years before I started working on this recipe, before I started developing the recipe. I have to say that in developing this recipe, I found myself asking over and over and over again, why don't I make this more often? It is so satisfying, creamy, delicious, full of flavor, and so quick and easy to make. It's ready in about 35 minutes, and it's just really good. In fact, I'm going to tell you, this doesn't always happen, very rarely happens. I'm actually making it for dinner tonight on the day that I'm recording this episode. Quite often, I've just gone through rounds of testing on recipes when I'm telling you about them, and I'm not making them like that day. But today, I am actually making this recipe. It is that good. I've convinced myself that I need to make it all of the time. Okay, so what is white chicken chili? Is it actually chili? It is chili, sort of, that is made with chicken instead of ground beef, and it's made with white beans, like a cannellini bean, pinto bean perhaps, instead of kidney beans, so no red beans, and then it doesn't have the tomato base. Instead, the flavors are more cumin, maybe some oregano, usually some canned green chilies or jalapeno can be in there. So a little bit of spice, more like smoky though. I like to head a little bit more towards the smokiness of the cumin, maybe even throw in a little bit of smoked paprika. You know what I mean? So that's the flavor profile. I will say that the recipe that I am telling you about is thickened with canned beans. 1 can of cannellini beans is pureed into the soup, and then a second can is left whole. So you have beans in there, and it's just so earthy and luscious and creamy. It's a really nice texture to the soup, like as though it's a cream soup, really, but without the cream. I do sometimes stir sour cream in at the end or dollop it onto the bowls to serve, but it doesn't need that because the beans give it so much of that nice starchiness. And then I'll also say that the chicken that I use for this recipe, I cook it right in the soup, and I'll tell you the different kinds you can use and how long to cook it when I'm going through the recipe. But you can use leftover chicken or rotisserie chicken. If it's already cooked, you just stir it in later. I will tell you when in the recipe as well. So it's really versatile that way. The other thing I'll say, this is not in the recipe that I'm telling you about, is that I quite often will stir in a cooked grain before serving just to heat through in the pot. Quite often I actually put the cold cooked grains into bowls and then ladle the soup over top. And this is because I have a tendency to serve soup that is way too hot, and I burn people's mouths because they go in for some and it's like that hot. And so if I have the soup that's been simmering on the stove and then I put the cold cooked grains in the bowl and ladle the soup over, it kind of comes to like a happy medium place, right? So that would be like some cooked rice, white or brown, or some farro. That's what I'm doing tonight. Some people pronounce it farro, or like quinoa, something like that, into the bowl with the soup ladled over top, or you can stir it right into the pot. Okay, let's dive into making the soup. In a medium pot, you are heating a tablespoon of cooking oil over medium heat, and then you're adding a small onion that you've chopped up, and you saute that just until it's softened, 3 or 4 minutes. Then you're adding in 2 cloves of minced garlic and 1.5 teaspoons of ground cumin. Cook and stir for about 30 seconds. That's blooming that cumin. It just brings out some extra flavors from it when it's like sitting in that oil warming like that. Oil extracts different flavors than water does, so by adding the cumin to the oil, we get those extra flavors. Okay, now to that pot, you are adding 1 15-ounce can of white cannellini beans that you've drained, and also 3 cups of chicken broth. Then you can either use an immersion blender to puree all of that right in there, or you can transfer it to a blender. Sometimes you have to do it in more than one batch, and then you puree it in there and put it back into the pot. Now, once that bean mixture is pureed, you'll see it's nice and thick and creamy. You're going to add 1 more can of the white cannellini beans that you've drained, and also a can of diced green chilies. That's a 4-ounce can with all the liquid in there and everything. You're just adding that whole thing in there, and also some salt, about 1/2 teaspoon of salt at this point. Then bring it to a gentle simmer. So yeah, at this point we have a little bit of onion in there, the garlic and the cumin, that's all pureed together with some of the beans, and we've also got the chicken broth and the chilies and some salt. So there's lots of flavor going on in there, okay? So now, after that comes up to a gentle simmer, that's when we're going to add our uncooked chicken, if you're using uncooked chicken. The recipe calls for a pound of boneless, skinless chicken breasts. You can can use boneless, skinless chicken thighs instead, or you can use chicken tenderloins. I really like them in here. They end up really finely shredded and very tasty. They cook really quickly. The tenderloins are going to cook more quickly than the chicken breast or the thighs. If you have the chicken breast or thighs, it's going to be simmering in there. Just stir it every now and then until it reaches 165 degrees Fahrenheit, which is going to take 12 to 15 minutes. If you have smaller pieces of chicken like the tenderloins, or maybe you have bite-sized pieces already, it's going to be a lot less. As little as 5, maybe as much as 9 or 10, depending on the size. Just cut into a bigger piece and make sure it's not pink inside. Now, at that point, if you have the bite-sized pieces, you don't have to do anything. But if you have tenderloins, breast, or chicken thigh, you're going to take the chicken out of the soup and then shred it with 2 forks and then put it back in. Simmer for 2 or 3 more minutes, just sort of warming everything through, blending it, and then taste and add more salt if you'd like. Now, once you've taken it off the heat, you can stir in a whole bunch of different optional ingredients. A cup of frozen corn. You can thaw it first, but either way, it's going to do what I was saying I do with the grains to kind of just temper the heat of the soup a little bit because it's so hot to serve right away. Or you can warm the corn up first. You're also optionally adding some sour cream. You can stir in a half cup of sour cream. You can stir in some cheese, half cup of shredded Monterey Jack, for instance, or like a Mexican blend. You could do the sour cream and the cheese more as like toppings on the soup as you serve it, or you can stir them right in. And then you can do toppings on this soup. So you can do crushed tortilla chips or like those salad tortilla strips. You can do fresh cilantro, cubed avocado, diced tomatoes. Anything like that is going to be really delicious. And then your soup kind of becomes a like build your own soup bowl. You know what I mean? So any of those options are possible. It's actually a great thing to kind of use up those bits and pieces because other than the chicken, a lot of those ingredients are from your pantry and you can just have those on hand and then add whatever fresh or even frozen ingredients you've got in the fridge to make a whole meal out of it and do those toppings, you know? Okay, I will put the link to this recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there. Everything there is arranged by date, so it's helpful to know that today is February 24th of 2026. I'm Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, cookfor2.us, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great day. Let's get cooking.